What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow, so today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 47, this time the finale, part 2. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and I feel like this finale went exactly as everyone was expecting it to go, which is kind of nice, kind of comforting. I feel like if some wild and crazy thing had happened, I feel like I would have felt robbed at least. So I'm glad that the finale kind of went as expected, and that we have a great new winner for Survivor 47.
It was really fun. Like we said last week, it was Rachel's game to lose. It was a little bit stressful at certain points, like, oh, at the challenge, fire, final tribal. But yeah, Rachel's game to lose, but she did not lose it, and she ends up winning the season.
Woohoo! So I don't know about you, but for a part of this season, when they said that it was going to be a 2-part finale, I was like, ooh, is there going to be a secret final 2? But no, there was no secret final 2. It was just final 3. I feel like it was a pretty standard finale in the sense that they had an immunity challenge at 4. There was a fire to decide who went home. Final 3 at tribal council, and I feel like also it was kind of standard in the sense that there was one really obvious winner. I feel like recently we haven't had a lot of close final tribals, so yeah.
True. So, like, if CBS didn't ask them to split the finale into 2 parts, I feel like it would have been more interesting because we would have went into Final 5, the regular finale, with like Genevieve, Sam, and Rachel all there. I think that would have been a lot of fun because you would be like speculating, oh, like maybe Genevieve could win, maybe Rachel could win. But now with the 2-part finale going into the Final 4 here with just Rachel around, like we said last week, it is sort of like, okay, can it be that obvious?
Yeah, and I feel like Jeff Probst also was like hyping up the finale, and I was like, he's only hyping this up because everyone feels like they know who's going to win, and he wants people to watch, even if the ending seems inevitable. And then the inevitable ending happened, so I felt good about my read on why Jeff was hyping up the finale.
Yeah, I think it was interesting though. The final immunity challenge was not Samotion. It was a big obstacle course. I was like, wow, I feel like a lot of times here in the new era, it's always been Samotion at the Final 4 challenge.
Yeah, I feel like it's been Samotion a lot because I feel like Samotion is one of those perfect examples of something that isn't really physically taxing at first, but it is really mentally taxing. And then as you're standing there longer and longer, you realize it actually is physically taxing. It's kind of an endurance challenge for both your brain and your body. And so I feel like that's why it has always been one of the best, like, Final 4 challenges. I feel like this one, we've kind of complained before about the whole setup of a lot of Survivor puzzles, or a lot of Survivor immunity challenges seem to be just like obstacle course puzzle. And this was exactly that formula of obstacle course puzzle. So I feel like it was very formulaic.
And with this challenge, I feel like having these like 3D puzzles at the end of every challenge, basically, really playing to Rachel's strengths. Like we saw her saying, this is my puzzle. I'm really good at these kinds of puzzles. I feel like Samotion might have been a little bit more equal across the playing field usually, because it's not like running up and down things like they are doing here and not having a puzzle at the end, which some people might just not be that good at puzzles compared to other people. So I feel like Samotion might be a little bit more fair. I do would want to see like an endurance challenge at the end of like at a Final 4 immunity where it's just okay standing, maybe have things poking your feet, you're just holding on to the idol like season 1, something like that where it's very equal.
Yeah, I feel like as a production person, you don't want even the appearance of something that could be favoriting one player or another. So I feel like the fact that, like you said, this was really Rachel's kind of challenge, possibly could be perceived by people who are bitter as like, oh, production was trying to like help Rachel. But I don't know. I definitely preferred the other kind of challenges over this one. And I feel like the most interesting thing about this challenge was that Rachel had a little bit of a snafu in the sense that like she got the puzzle wrong when she originally called Jeff over, and I feel like that was one of the only moments of like, gasp, will Rachel not win? But then it became pretty obvious Rachel was winning regardless.
Sam and Rachel were pretty close on the puzzle. Like her bat ear was backwards, but she got the mess up pretty quick. It was a good thing though that the mess up wasn't like in the body, the middle of the puzzle, because then you would have to change the entire thing to try to fix that one piece. So she's very lucky that it was only at the bottom, but maybe it's the case that those middle pieces aren't ones that you might accidentally flip around. So that sort of saves it.
Yeah, I feel like though, if it was a piece of the body, you would have probably noticed earlier if something was wrong with it.
Yeah, it's like I guess the coloring was a little bit similar. They didn't show us what the other side looked like, so I was like, okay, hard to really tell. I guess the coloring was backwards for the bat ear.
Yeah, I couldn't tell until Jeff said something was wrong. So,
but the puzzle clue, so they had on the little lockbox, there was a clue. It's saying it's what you need to do when they flipped over the tarp to unveil the lock combination, or so here it was a word combination. And Jeff was saying it out loud too. And just like seeing that and then hearing Jeff say it, I was like, oh, unlock is a pretty simple word to get there. You know, obviously a lot harder because you might not be listening to Jeff. You don't know to look underneath the tarp thing. But now it's like, okay, you got to look underneath the tarp.
yeah, that seemed pretty simple, but also, again, I feel like I give this excuse every time someone does something stupid on Survivor, but it's been 25 days of no food, no sleep. And so maybe that's why people were struggling with that.
True. Even just looking at the letters on their table scrambled, I was like, oh, sometimes your mind can just see it really easily, and other times your mind just can't. Here, when they pan to the letters, I was like, ah, I see unlock. That'd be a good word here.
Yeah, that would be a good word there.
So Teeny here is also unable to cut the rope. I thought this was funny. We was like, we need Andy back so he can grind onto the rope and cut it.
So he can saw the rope. Shouldn't have voted Andy out.
So Rachel does win the final four immunity challenge here. She's now in the Hall of Fame for Survivor Women, winning 4 individual immunity challenges, joining Jenna, Chrissy, Kim, and Kelly. And then she also says, oh, but Kelly Wigglesworth and Chrissy didn't win, so it's not just about challenges. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Maybe it's foreshadowing. Maybe she's just realizing, okay, I also need to share things at Final Tribal that isn't just challenges, because being a challenge beast doesn't win you the game.
Yeah, and I feel like Rachel already knew that she had to share more than just like, oh, I was a challenge beast, especially because some people do use that as a way to discredit somebody's win. Like, oh, if the only thing you did was win challenges, of course you're not like going to be handed the game. But I think Rachel knew that already, and so it was more of a reminder for us viewers. And again, I feel like a lot of times when it seems as obvious as it was that Rachel was the winner, they have to build suspense in some way. So I feel like building suspense of like, oh, there are people who won as much as Rachel who didn't win the game, is still like a way to try to build suspense for us.
And I think I agree. I think people online are like, oh, like poo-pooing Rachel and like the challenges and stuff like that. But I feel like we're pretty equitable. It's like, okay, if a man goes on an individual immunity challenge win, we're not going to be like, yeah, he obviously deserves to win. Similar to here, just because someone goes on an immunity win doesn't mean they deserve to win. I feel like for us, it's like, oh, we would also want to see them doing strategic things too.
Yeah, we would want to see them doing strategic things too. And I think it's also one of those things where Rachel has lost immunity challenges and had to like figure out what to do with it. So I think it helps that Rachel hasn't rested on her laurels or been like, I can just win the next immunity challenge and it'll be fine. Like she's tried to maneuver in addition to, winning immunity challenges.
Yeah, so she wins, and then it's set basically Teeny versus Sam for fire. I was maybe thinking, oh, maybe Rachel might throw herself in against Sam here. That would be very spicy.
That would be kind of spicy, but I liked Rachel's explanation for why she wasn't going to throw herself in against Sam. I feel like her explanation of, I've done enough without it, and I'm not sure how much of a boost it would actually provide me. And like the risk versus reward scenario where like you don't want to potentially risk not getting to the final three where you have a strong case to make, just in case you would have like 11 points instead of 10 in your favor. So I feel like Rachel did a really good job of articulating her choice. And I mean, it must have been a decent enough choice because she still won the game.
I agree. I'm glad that the jury didn't think less of her for not throwing herself into fire. I feel like that's the rhetoric we've been seeing recently. Like, okay, if you win the challenge, you should throw yourself into fire because that's a big move. And then, like, try to knock someone out via fire. And, like, people at Final Tribal Council are blasted for not throwing themselves into fire. So I agree. I'm glad that she's like, I don't think my resume needs fire. And then the jury agrees with her by still awarding her the win, even though she could have but didn't throw herself into fire. I'm hoping, this continues into future seasons of Survivor because I do think it is annoying. Like we've talked about, like, okay, you've won one challenge. Why do you need to prove yourself again by doing another challenge? Like winning Final Four immunity is the prize. You don't need to go do another prize of winning fire.
Yeah, and I think for Rachel, it also helped because it's like her game has been about making mid-size moves over and over rather than making like one or two explosive big moves. And I feel like that kind of shows the difference between like her game and like Sam's game, where Sam, Genevieve, and Andy, when they did Operation Italy, that was a huge move that if Sam had been able to like continue capitalizing on it, it would have been great for his resume. But it felt like that didn't even really come up at Final Tribal just because Rachel had so many other like consistently good moves. And it's the difference between like playing a great game for a few days and playing a good game for all 26 days.
Yeah, so Teenie versus Sam. Teenie becomes a hater of Sam again. Teenie says that they're pretty good at making fire. Sam's saying that he's never made fire before. And then we go into this segment of Sam basically saying what we're all thinking, like, oh, we're yelling at the TV. How have you not practiced fire before? And I was like, same. Have you not practiced fire before? Felt a little bit bad for him when he's like in the confessional and crying about this. But also it's like, yo, you're going on Survivor. Why didn't you practice?
And even if you didn't practice before going on Survivor, you've been on the island for 26 days. Like, surely you must have had time on one of those 26 days to practice. So I definitely was with him yelling at the TV. So at least he was self-aware about it.
That's true. He wasn't blaming other people. He was only blaming himself. So that's really all you can ask for. Like, yeah, you're not practicing fire before the show. You're not practicing fire while you're out there on a board day. That is your own problem. So very self-aware. That's a good thing.
Very self-aware. I feel like this final fire challenge, though, it made me a little bit angry just because it was like the wind of all things was, I feel like, what made the difference in this challenge. And I feel like Sam somewhere must have like a lucky rabbit's foot or something for the wind to have changed like at the precise moment that he needed it to change. And I feel like it's one of those things, though, where we've talked about a lot. Some of Survivor is luck. Every winner who's won Survivor has gotten there at least a little bit on luck. And so I feel like, if Sam had won this season because of a lucky wind burst during Final Fire, I feel like it would feel a little different. But, I was a little bit peeved when I saw the wind on the television screen, let me tell you.
It's wild. People on Reddit were like, oh, Sam has got to believe in God now. Because something with that wind, the wind really helped him here and was really against Teenie for some reason. I feel like it's not unallowed that you have to stay seated. Teenie should have stood up and maybe tried to block the wind with their body because the wind was like blowing their fire directly away from the rope, which is so wild that would have happened. But like, yeah, Teenie was doing so well at first. And then I was thinking, oh, maybe Sam, it's going to be like his confessional saying that he's going to be so embarrassed that if he can't even get a spark, he can't make fire. How embarrassing is that? That maybe he was going to flub it And then the wind happened. I was like, wow, this is wild.
Yeah, it was wild. And some people have pointed out that it looked like they built their fires in slightly different places on their platform. Like Teeny built her fire like directly beneath the rope, whereas Sam built his like a little bit behind the rope. So people were like, it is strategy after. I'm not sure how much I believe that it actually was strategy versus just like where they happened to place the fire, and it happened to be a little bit different for each of them. But yeah, I feel like maybe Teeny didn't stand up because like you still have to be like watching the fire. You still have to be feeding it during this time. So, yeah.
True. I wonder if you could be like, yo, Rachel, come block the wind. I feel like everyone else probably has to stay seated, but if it's not against the rules for the two fire makers to stand up, then you could try that. Maybe it's not even against the rules for like Rachel or Sue to stand up. I'd probably say it's against the rules for the jury to move around, but maybe you
I
could
feel like it
ask
would
Rachel or
be,
Sue to help.
I feel like that would be interference and probably not the best way to play the game. So I don't think I would have liked it if Rachel or Sue had come to help me. So.
Both of them stand up and make a wall there, and then no wind hits either of their fires.
Make it as equal as possible.
So before the fire making challenge, though, the editing between Teeny and Sam, they had this confessional before Tribal where it's like cutting back and forth, but they're both saying basically like the same sentence. I thought that was a really cool cut.
I thought it was a really cool cut because like they do essentially always say the same thing. Like the people who know they're going into fire are just like, this fire could be my $1 million fire. So I feel like it was a cool way to keep us from having to hear the same exact thing twice.
Yeah, I really liked it. And we also see Sam reading his letters from home. I thought this was interesting because Owen on RHAP, maybe like 2 weeks ago, he was talking about the family letters from his season. And then he was talking about how, like, yeah, for his season and other seasons, people, when they get the letters, it sort of takes their mind out of the game a little bit and it sort of becomes a crutch. I feel like we haven't seen people mention their letters really after the reward when it happens, but then it comes up again here. So it's like, oh, that's a cool throwback to what Owen was saying a few weeks ago.
Honestly, I didn't realize that they were allowed to keep their letters. I kind of thought that it had to stay at the reward place, the way that like if there's extra food at the reward, they can't bring it back to camp. So I thought it was cool that they like were allowed to bring them back, because for some reason I thought they weren't allowed to.
The letters are going to get really dirty out there.
So true.
So, Sam wins fire. Teeny loses. They're crying, which is sort of sad to watch them crying after fire. I'm surprised though that Sam winning fire didn't get him. I thought I could get him some more brownie points here. If it's close though, I feel like here it seems like okay, less close. Some people debating, like Sierra, Gabe debating between, okay, should I vote between Rachel or Sam? I feel like if there's a lot of people on the jury where it's two people sort of similar at Final Tribal and the people on the jury are a little bit more up in the air, then I think you've got to be the person to beat that other person in fire.
Yeah, I feel like that's the case as well. So,
or if you don't beat them in fire and like you're confident enough, I guess, you bring them with you. So it's like, okay, instead of Rachel bringing Sue, she would bring Sam as that person and sends Teeny and Sue to fire. But that makes a little bit less sense because it's like, oh, if you think they're a threat, you should at least try to send them to fire to eliminate them rather than like not let them get kudos and brownie points in front of the jury by bringing them through with you. But here, I guess, hindsight's 2020. It doesn't really matter that Rachel didn't throw herself into fire because she was already higher up on the totem than Sam.
Yeah, and I do think it was really interesting that Rachel and Sam like kind of had that conversation during the final tribal council where Rachel was like, yeah, it's better for my game if you are not here, but that doesn't mean that I had to do something stupid to try to take you out. Like, even if it would be easier for me to win against Sue and Teeny, I still believe I could win even if you were here. So, yeah.
That's True. That's just how fire is. It's like like Jeff saying, "Oh, you're not voted out of Survivor. The tribe has spoken but hasn't really spoken because you weren't voted out. Like you have a chance to save yourself." So, you can throw someone into fire and they can still win. Doesn't mean it's like a regular vote and they're getting gone home.
Exactly.
So, final tribal council, I thought it was funny that Sue does her reveal and she says she's 59 today, and then everyone has these like really shocked faces. I thought that was the best part of the episode.
Yeah, I have seen so many debates on whether that was acting or not, and so I feel like we're probably never going to know, just because it wouldn't be polite for people to be like, oh yeah, I totally knew that Sue wasn't in her 40s. But I thought it was fun little reveal. It was cool that it was her birthday, just because all the days in the year, the Survivor finale happens to fall on your birthday. That's fun.
Yeah, that is fun. And it's like, she would have to be counting all the days. What if you're one day off by accident? You would have to be like, okay, so we started this game on a Monday, which was the 24th. And so then day 26 of this game is now the next month. I feel like it'd be hard to count.
Yeah, and I don't know. It seems like people are really good about like knowing when their birthdays are on Survivor. So I wonder, because I feel like there have been previous seasons where someone has been like on a random day, like, oh, today's my birthday. So I assume that you do it like you count like before you leave, and you're like, okay, if we're starting on this day, then that means that day 10 is like my birthday. And Jeff is always like, it's day 20, whatever. So maybe people don't realize that it's their birthday until Jeff's like, it's day 23. And you like think back to like, oh shoot, day 23 is my birthday. So, I think that would be funny.
It would be funny though too if you just got your birthday wrong. So I'm like, okay, actually this whole week is my birthday now because I'm not really sure which day it is. So from day 7 to 14 here on Survivor, every day is my birthday.
I mean, who's going to fact check you? It's not like any of the other contestants know when your birthday is. As long as you're not saying it's your birthday like 3 times in 20 days. You think people are going to believe you?
You could maybe try for 3 days. You're like, oh, I think my birthday's today. Everyone treats you nice. Don't vote me out. It's my birthday. Then the next day you're like, actually, I think I did my math wrong. I think today is my birthday. You can't vote me out today either.
I feel like everyone should start doing that at Final Tribal. That would be like, today's my birthday. And then see what it gets them. Because it didn't really get Sue that far. I don't know. It's hard because when they were doing the like bit before Final Tribal where like everyone was saying their game, and then they had like a clip of a jury member like explaining like what might make that person worth voting for. I feel like Sue's was kind of the weakest, where Gabe was like, if Sue can prove to me that she was loyal as a strategy and not loyal just because she was dumb, then I'll vote for her. And it's kind of like, I don't believe that for 1 second. So you do sometimes wonder if the goats know that they're goats, and I wonder if Sue knew that she was a goat.
Maybe yes and no. I feel like in one of her confessionals before Final Tribal, she was like, oh, all these people underestimated me. They just think I'm the GOAT, but I have a lot of things that I'm going to bring up going into Final Tribal. For birthdays, I wonder, is losing Survivor better or worse than doing dishes on your birthday?
I feel like losing Survivor is still better than many other things, because even coming in third place, you get a lot of money. So I would love a check for, I think third place gets like $80,000. So I would love a check for $80,000 for my birthday. So if any of you are rich, keep that in mind. Yeah.
Not bad for like a month and a half of work after 3 weeks of the show, 2 weeks of like going out there, quarantining.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people online are like, oh, Rachel's a bad winner because she was lucky. Even in Final Tribal, it does seem like the luck aspect was brought up a lot. I feel like yes and no. It like is luck, but it also isn't luck to a way. Like, okay, it might be lucky that she bought the auction idol that happened to have the idol clue in it, but she still had to be smart and like maneuver around finding this clue, cutting the idol out of the tarp when everyone was around, not having anyone see it, not sharing the idol to other people that they would use it against her. and then play the idol in a correct way. So it's like, okay, it might be lucky getting the idol, but it's not luck how she was able to use the idol correctly after she got it.
Mm-hmm. And I think also a lot of times people get mad when people use multiple idols, but it's like Rachel really only needed this one idol play to cement her position in the game. And I feel like that's different from needing an idol. Like people were really mad when Ben found like 3 idols in a row. And it's like, I can understand that where like, you know, you don't want someone to be saved by idols back to back to back to back. So I mean, like I said, every winner has some element of luck, and I feel like Rachel's was like, yeah, she had some good luck, but she also had some really bad luck. Like the tribal where she used the safety without power, like she should have. It was stupid that she was in a position where it was 5 against 1 in the first place, and so you could argue that the good luck of getting the safety without power just negated the bad luck of the way the like groups were drawn in that scenario. So I feel like it's one of those things where everyone has good luck. Everyone also has some tough breaks. And I feel like Rachel does not stand out to me as someone who was like particularly lucky.
I agree. I would say for me, the luckiest thing would be Saul giving that advantage to her. But it's like, okay, I think it's more luck that production stuck that kind of advantage in here at that point in time where it's basically going to save someone. Because then you could be like, okay, it's like Rachel's social game to get Saul to play that advantage on her. He might say, like, yeah, obviously, like, I would have to give it to her because it was 5 versus 1 at that tribal. And, like, he may have wanted to give it to Tiana since they were close. But, like, he chose to give it to her. So that's like, okay, maybe you could say that's good social game rather than luck. It wasn't luck that he gave it to her. Like, luck would be it being placed on the island in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was also funny that Andy brought up Ben and Mike as challenge beasts and sort of poo-pooing on them. I was like, dang, they're catching strays.
They're catching strays. I also think it's funny because when I think of like challenge beast winners, I feel like Ben and Mike are not like the first people that I think of when I think of challenge beast winners. And I feel like actually most challenge beasts don't win. So yeah.
Yeah, I also liked how Andy brought up Rachel's bad voting record, saying, like, oh, actually, your voting record out of the 3 people here is the worst one. I like that. I think, like, this is the kind of stuff we need to bring to Final Tribal Council, like, bring out the facts, the statistics of it, because it's, like we've said before, a lot of Final Tribal Council is, like, how well you speak, how well you can craft the story, how well your narrative is how well people on the jury believe what you're saying if they can't really fact check it. Because if you're like, oh yeah, I planned this move, and someone's like, no, you didn't, I planned it, that's easily fact checkable. But like smaller things that you might have done solo, people can, you can sort of just make up or embellish because you can't really fact check it. So I do like how they're bringing in those stats of like, yeah, you actually didn't vote that well this entire season here. And I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. I also like that Rachel and Sam like kind of argued a little bit with each other. It felt like they were both giving their best arguments, I guess, for why they should be the winner, but it also was never mean. I feel like they didn't really interrupt or like yell over each other, which I feel like we've seen in some like previous tribal councils where they will just start talking louder and louder. So I thought it was really cool because they were debating, but it very much felt like a debate and not like them going at each other as people. And I think that one of the things that a lot of people have said is really nice about this season is that people are able to separate the game from like who they are as people, but also still like each other as people. Like we've talked about this over and over, but it's like they're able to say like, it's better for my game to do this. As a person, I want to do this. I'm going to like do the thing that's better for my game, but I still feel this as a person. Like they're not just game botting their way through the game, except for maybe Gabe. And like there are the moments of like genuine human connection in addition to the game. And I feel like this is one of the better new era seasons because it has balanced those two things really well.
I agree. I thought Sam did really well in his final tribal performance. He spoke very well. I really liked it when he brought up his stats of like these are the things that I've done this season. I was like, okay, yeah, coming in with the receipts. Like I like that fight and the fire that you're bringing. And I agree. I did really like Rachel and Sam like sort of throwing shade at each other, but in a respectful way. And I feel like we need more of that at Final Tribal Council. Like, okay, these two people are actually going head to head. One person isn't just laying down and dying. They're just going to let the other person win the game and sort of like tap out of the debate. But they're both just like putting their best foot forward, saying, like, yeah, I did this. The other person rebutting it and then them going back and forth a little bit. I was like, okay, this is a good final tribal council like fight here. Like this is what I want to see more of, them respectfully saying like, this is my game, you didn't do that in your game, or this is why my game is better than your game.
Yeah, and like Jeff said after Rachel was announced as the winner, like Sam gave a really good final tribal performance. I thought that it would have been a lot closer than it was, just because it felt like it was a good performance, and he really sold the game that he played. I feel like both he and Rachel did a really good job of selling their game. It wasn't like one of them played a lot better but then flubbed at tribal. It was they both had different interesting games, and the jury ultimately decided that Rachel's game was the game that they wanted to reward. So I like that too.
Me too. I'm also glad that the friends just didn't just vote for their island friends out there. So Sierra didn't just vote for Sam, Caroline didn't just vote for Sue, but they voted for who they thought was a better winner and like didn't give some weird or lame excuse about why they didn't vote for their friend. But like I think, okay, cool. Like you said, they can separate the game and their friendships, and just vote for who they thought is a better winner for a legitimate reason.
Yeah. I have thought, like, seen some stuff about like why Kyle voted for Sam. And it's very interesting because it seems like people pretty much all agree that Kyle voted for Sam because they wanted Sam to be the second place finisher and not it be like a co-runner up with Sue. And so I thought that was interesting too, how they had like one designated Sam vote, because I feel like if people wanted to vote for Sam to be the runner up, like he probably would have gotten more than one vote. But I do wonder, like coming into Final Tribal, how many of these people already had their votes determined, because it sounds like maybe everyone kind of knew that they wanted to vote for Rachel, and then Final Tribal solidified it, because it sounded like the jury had all like talked beforehand, because they all knew like, oh, Gabe's going to talk first at Final Tribal. And it seems like Kyle was the appointed Sam voter. So it's at times like this I miss Ponderosa videos.
It is interesting because I think maybe like RHAP, we're talking about this, but like sequestering the jury, because there's a lot of, I guess it's like you can sort of sway the jury by like all of them hanging out for all this time. And that's why we've seen so many basically like 7-1-0 votes in the recent seasons, besides last season, but it's almost always very unanimous because everyone's talking at Ponderosa that they all sort of start to get that hive mind. So I think like Rob and them were saying like, okay, if you sequestered everyone, then you would go into Final Tribal Council with a true, like, this is what each person thinks individually, rather than like, okay, this is the consensus that the group has now come up with after hanging out for X number of days.
Yeah. I think it's hard though, because you don't want to make being on the jury like also a crappy experience, because I feel like one of the only good things about being voted out is that like you get to hang out with people and have a good time and eat good food. And I feel like sequestering them would be so hard too, because it's like, are they going to have to like schedule the meal times and stuff like that? Because it's interesting, because sequestering a jury in like a murder trial just means that the jury can't talk to people outside of the jury, but they can still talk to each other. But sequestering the jury in Survivor would mean that the jury can't even talk to each other. So it's like, how would you do that logistically, especially towards the end when there's like 8 of them? Like, are they just confined to their rooms in Ponderosa? So I think there definitely is like a social contagion element of it, where, you know, people have talked about being like the king or queen of Ponderosa and how that can help your game. or help if like the first person on the jury is a fan of yours. But then also like, you know, let people have fun.
Yeah, I think that's basically what they were saying too. It's like a lot of times once you're voted out, like being in the jury villa and talking about the game and like sort of like therapying through it with each other is very helpful for the people out there. So like taking that away might be harmful since you can't talk about that. Another thing they were saying was like, oh, maybe like it's like sequestered, but like sort of in the way that you're just not allowed to talk about the game or the people left in the game. Like that's blocked, but you can talk about whatever else you want to talk about and hang out with each other and do those things without talking about the game. Maybe it's like, okay, you can talk about the game for the night that that person gets voted out when you're all at dinner together. But after that, then it's like, oh, the blocked conversation. So then maybe it's less of polluting everyone's thoughts.
I do wonder how much of it is polluting everyone's thoughts versus just like the facts of a situation. Like if you get blindsided and then the next person who comes to Ponderosa explains like, oh, this is how we orchestrated your blindside, like that's going to change the way you view it. And so kind of like having another person's perspective. And I feel like that would also make Final Tribal more impactful if someone really had to sell, like, this is what I did, and you have to either believe me or not believe me because you haven't heard from anyone else in this situation before now. So I don't know. I think it's a very interesting like thought exercise, but I'm not sure the Survivor producers would ever actually do it. So.
I think definitely positives and negatives here. But we get to the reunion, and it's really bad and really short. I was like, this is bad. So bad.
Yeah, again, I feel like it's just when they've had so little time to process, it's kind of sucky. And I also feel like the reunion also was kind of bad because none of them disliked each other that much. Like I feel like the only animosity was like Kyle and Sue and then maybe Teeny and Sam, but it seems like Teeny had like figured out their feelings about Sam and Kyle and Sue was kind of one-sided anyway. So like I feel like the reunion is always a little more dramatic when people are like a little bit peeved at each other, but no one was peeved.
I feel like they didn't really talk about any new information. Like the best part was seeing the Survivor season 48 premiere information, but like they were basically just recapping and talking about things we already knew about. It's like, oh, we would want like new information, new drama to come out of the reunion, but it's like I've already seen all this.
Yeah. I feel like Jeff said something like, oh, before you can see how other people react to you. And to me, I feel like that's one of the interesting parts of it is seeing how people react to people reacting to them. You know, like, oh, I didn't realize that this move was going to be so controversial. Or like, oh, I didn't realize like X, Y, and Z about this. And so I feel like that's part of the interesting part, like having people have time to process and also receive other people's opinions, like can change the way that they view the game. And I guess Jeff doesn't want that, but that is interesting objectively. So
I guess we'd get it from exit interviews since those are filmed now and not a year ago, 6 months ago, depending on when your season was filmed and when it's airing. So I guess that's like people's thoughts after they've seen the internet, after they've seen the episodes coming out. But yeah, I'm like, the reunion, we talk about it every season since it's been changed, but it's just so bad.
Well, I thought it was funny because Jeff also made a comment about like, and for all the pre-jury people who couldn't be here, I was like, Jeffrey, you're the one who didn't invite them. Like, it's not that they couldn't be here. It's that you literally didn't invite them. So, yeah.
But Rachel wins Survivor season 47, and now we're on to the next.
Onwards and upwards, baby.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Survivor season 48. The preview looked fun and interesting. Guess we're on a Survivor hiatus now, but a lot of good TV shows coming out at the start of next year. The Traitors being one of them. So maybe we'll recap something else on the hiatus from Survivor.
Maybe we will. Who knows? Not me. So
So I really liked this season. I thought it was a lot of fun. As always, I enjoyed talking with Alyssa throughout the season.
Yes, we have so enjoyed getting to recap Survivor. Once again, I feel like this is a great season, a good rewatchable season. We've loved getting to talk with each other. We love getting to hear all of y'all's opinions. And yeah, it's always so satisfying to wrap up the season that we have been, talking about for the past 3 months. So it's a good time.
True. And honestly, I would say maybe this is a season that you would recommend to new watchers that never have seen Survivor and they're like, oh, I'm trying to get into it. And you need to recommend them a new era season to watch. Season 47 might be the one you recommend.
Yeah, recommend them season 47. Fast forward past a little part in the final tribal where Andy spoils 2 winners and you're golden.
True, yeah. So thank you all so much for watching. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this season, what you thought of this finale episode. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube, so also subscribe if you want to see more content from us talking about Survivor, other strategy reality television shows going into the new year. So we hope you all have a happy holidays and a happy new year, and we'll see you all in 2025.